So, they thought moving an attractive 20-year-old woman into their house would be a really good idea. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? Stick around, find out.
God never showed up.
I'm screaming out, God please save me. Outside my mind, man, I think I'm going crazy. Forgotten victims saying they never heard of us. Slain by the small town murderers. Small town murders. Small town murders. Small town murders. Welcome to the small town murders.
Good morning, everyone. Treasure Troller here. Welcome to another edition of Small Town Murders, not the podcast. Today we are in Hart, Michigan, and we're going to discuss the bathtub murder of Leanne Shannon. Tim and Leanne Shannon were a couple in their early 30s. They had two small children, and they lived here in Hart on Cortlandt Street. And on December 29th, 2012, Tim made a phone call to 911 stating that his wife had died. And this is the house right over here. So, after the call was made, of course, emergency services arrived along with the officer Juan Salazar of the Hart City Police. They were met at the front door by Tim Shannon, who had a cup of coffee in one hand, and he pointed in the direction of the bathroom where Leanne's body was in the bathtub. I want to show you this. Oops. Want to get that building too, because that comes in later on. So, Officer Salazar interviewed Tim, and he did a preliminary investigation, took some pictures along with Leanne's body in the bathroom. There were several wine bottles and a bottle of Everclear in there as well. Officer Salazar also found out there were two young children that lived in the residence as well. One was with grandparents in another town, and the other one, the daughter, was being taken care of that day by a young lady by the name of Jamie Hathaway. And that's pretty much where Officer Salazar well, also I should say the medical examiner's investigator showed up and did a physical assessment on Leanne's body, and they found no evidence of trauma on her body, and they also labeled the death suspicious. They labeled the death suspicious for two reasons. One is adults usually don't die in the bathtub, and two, Leanne's physical stature made it seem rather improbable that she would have died in the bathtub. Shall we say law enforcement or official records had her weight at 230 pounds. Media reports that I saw had the weight considerably more. So they found it rather difficult for this to happen. They may have still looked at it as a suicide, but unfortunately, Mr. Salazar could no longer continue with the investigation because Tim was also a member of the Hart City Council, and it would have been a conflict of interest for the city police to be looking at a city councilman. So it was turned over to Oceana County Sheriff's Department, and the detectives re-interviewed Tim, And they also took an interest in the young lady that was watching over the Shannon's daughter during that day, Jamie Hathaway. And it was during that interview when things in this investigation took a different turn. See, Jamie met Tim at his place of work, sort of a local farmer's market here in Hart. It was through a mutual friend. And they struck up a casual friendship, and that was the summer of 2011. Casual in the sense that if Tim was to take the kids to the park or on a walk, Jamie would accompany them. And this continued to the fall. Jamie, I think, had fallen on hard times or was having a few issues. She wouldn't be specific in court, but she didn't have a place to stay. And the Shannons, both Tim and Leanne, agreed to let Jamie move into the house with them. So Jamie moved into the Shannons' house in October of 2011. And at first things went quite well. They went from being friends to being best of friends. But 7 months into this living arrangement, Tim and Jamie began to have an affair. And Jamie moved out 1 month later. Now, according to Jamie's testimony, both her and Tim tried to end this relationship, but they never were able to quite part ways. And Tim had finally told Jamie that he was going to divorce Leanne, and of course he wanted to be with Jamie. And I guess a bit of a divorce plan was taking shape. And according to Jamie, Jamie kind of at the end set the time frame for, as it being around the 29th of December. So Jamie, a few days prior to the 29th, was staying at a local hotel here in Hart, and she was also moving some of her personal belongings into that shed that I showed you earlier. It doesn't appear that Leanne knew this was going on. And on the 28th, the day before the big move, Jamie and Tim were together, and he told her that he had told Leanne about the divorce and that he was going to help her move to her mother's apartment. And her mother had an apartment in Shelby, which is about 5 miles from Hart. She was in the nursing home at the time. I think either recovering from injury or a surgery. She was doing rehab. And that Tim was going to move her down there on the morning of the 29th. Now at approximately 9 o'clock in the morning on the 29th, Jamie showed up to the house and picked up the daughter and took her to Muskegon. At 11 o'clock in the morning, the 911 call was made concerning Leanne. So it was after 11 when Jamie had found out a terrible accident had happened at the house. And when police were interviewing her, when she was there that morning, she said she thought she heard Leanne snoring, and she never saw her. She didn't want to cause a problem, and that's why she was there to get the daughter in case there was some problem during the move. The daughter wouldn't be there to see it. So all Jamie really knew was she picked up the daughter, and she didn't see Leanne, but she thought she might have heard her. But By now, Tim probably figured out what was going on, that the Shannon County Sheriff's Department was kind of putting things together, and he made a confession. And according to Tim, what had happened was, after Jamie had taken the daughter out of the house, that he had went into the bathroom to talk with Leanne, and an argument ensued. And Leanne started getting a little bit violent. She was striking at Tim, and eventually she grabbed him and pulled him into the bathtub. And he, during this struggle, I guess you could call it, he hit his head and he fell on top of Leanne. And he fell on her in such a way that his chest was on her face, and the blow to the head dazed Tim, sort of lost his senses for a moment. Tim describes that moment as lasting 3 minutes, that it finally took him to gather himself and get out of the bathtub, and by then it was too late. So after he realized it was too late, he emptied the water out of the bathtub, took off his wet clothes, put them in the washing machine, sort of hung around the house for a while, and then eventually called 911. So like I said, the 911 call was at 11 a.m. Jamie took the kid from the house at approximately 9, and the coroner's report, or the coroner's investigator's report, had the time of death around 9 a.m. So conceivably there was 2 hours from the time that the accident took place until Tim made a phone call. So in June of 2013, Tim pleaded guilty to second-degree murder. And in July of 2013, he was sentenced to 13 and a half to 75 years in jail. Jamie was never indicted on anything related to the murder of Leanne Shannon. One other thing I found a little bit interesting was, after the bathroom scene, if you want to call it that, was taken care of, as far as the investigators, emergency services had left, the coroner's investigator had left, after everyone had left, and of course after Leanne had left, Jamie moved in that day. She stayed a couple of days with Tim until he, I guess, asked her to leave because he needed time to heal. So there you have the bathtub murder of Leanne Shannon. For Small Town Murders, not the podcast, this is Treasure Troller saying aloha and good day.